Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere and welcome to the Nichecast coming at you on January 17th. You are listening in and watching the big man Scotty Ting of the Nichecast, responsible for the rugby league coverage, cricket coverage. That's primarily what we do at the moment, although we do have a bit of Black Sticks hockey. They are trying to qualify for the Olympics. I think the women did lose to USA, and I obviously have covered hockey in the past. There's just no real need to at the moment. They're just diminishing. So not falling off my UFC beat as well. So we've had a few losses on the Nichecast beat, but I am here talking rugby league and cricket, writing about rugby league and cricket on our website, theniche-case.com, and obviously that means my comrade Nico the Wildcard. He's doing all the football. He's doing all the basketball and boxing. Got a bit of boxing. Got a bit of Joseph Parker momentum that we'll touch on in a jiffy as well. So there's some boxing stuff happening, but big football, big basketball stuff on the radar as well. We are from the niche-case.com, and we are here to have a chat about Aotearoa sports. That's what we do. You can read about stuff on our website, but if you don't want to read, if you can't read, it's all good. Just open your eardrums and have a listen to some Aotearoa sporting yarns. On the agenda today, got a bit of a situation with the Warriors and the Dragons in the NRL, so we'll touch on that. That's a funny little one. We do have some Joseph Parker updates, a bit of news with Joseph Parker. Obviously, the Blackcaps, they're cruising through their T20 series with Pakistan. We are recording this at 10 a.m. on Wednesday the 17th, and the Blackcaps play their third T20 International this afternoon. Funky little 1 p.m. kickoff. Think it's a 1 p.m.er? Yeah, 1 p.m. kickoff in Dunedin. And obviously, anyone who has been reading our newsletter via Substack, thenichecase.substack.com, would know that Kiwis love cricket. And Kiwis are showing out to cricket. And a 1 p.m. kickoff in Dunedin, middle of the day on a Wednesday, middle of the day, middle of the week, has no impact at all for Blackcaps ticket sales. I think it's sold out already, and Kiwis definitely love cricket. And once again, the only major New Zealand sport that complains about ticket sales is rugby union. Meanwhile, the Blackcaps are selling out everywhere they go. You're watching Super Smash cricket, decent crowds, and so on and so forth. We have talked about that a long time, and I do remember fairly impressive crowds for a lot of the NBL basketball in Aotearoa, and the Breakers suck, but still they're getting good crowds as well. So
record crowds, Women's World Cup as well in the football. Chuck that on the pile, you know.
There you go, bit of history there. All of which was to say that the Blackcaps are playing this afternoon, just after we finish recording. So I do have a couple of bigger Blackcaps stories that I want to share and get Nick's opinions on. But that game's going to be happening by the time you listen to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk Blackcaps versus Pakistan T20s on our subscriber podcast tomorrow on Thursday, as well as a full roundup of Flying Kiwis action. The Flying Kiwis beat Kiwi footballers overseas. That is simmering. We had a bit of a quiet patch over Christmas and New Year's, but it's starting to ramp up with transfers, goal scorers, and all sorts of Aotearoa footballing excellence overseas. That subscriber podcast is available via Patreon and for the paid Substack subscribers. So you can upgrade your free Monday and Friday Substack newsletter subscription to a paid subscription to support us and access that subscriber podcast as well. Or you can join the Patreon whānau and access the subscriber podcast. You can also donate through Buy Me a Coffee and generally just support the brothers out, however you want to do it, whether it's free stuff, with subscribing on YouTube, checking out the website, following us on social media, and all that other stuff. We're not really big on social media, so you might just want to have a read. That's what you can do on our website, theniche-case.com, or through the newsletter as well, which is sent out directly to you with all the Niche Case content. Patreon link, Substack link, website link, even our email. Buy me a coffee link as well. It's all in the description box for however you're absorbing this podcast. So we've got a bit of Blackcaps, bit of Breakers, bit of Joseph Parker, bit of Ronald Volkman, and a bit of Super Smash, and a bit of Wellington Phoenix. We're here covering all the regular niche cage beats, and we're going to have a bit of fun. But first, we need a bit of mindfulness to get us in the zone, calm us down, or spark us up, because you do offer the odd hostile mindfulness that does invigorate the brain.
Yeah, hostile mindfulness. This one might apply to that. I'm not sure. I guess, like all of them, it just depends on which way you want to take it. This is a Navajo proverb that goes, "You cannot wake a person who is only pretending to be asleep." Which is true. You can't. You can't. They're already awake.
Yep, that's correct. What else? What else do you mean? That was a very practical initial response. You can't wake someone who's pretending to be asleep because they're not asleep. What's your deeper cut there?
Yeah, I dangled it out there to see if you'd have an initial response. So I guess I left it a bit too a little bit too vague. I mean, there's the obvious thing of like you can't teach someone who isn't willing to learn, kind of thing, right? You can extend that into that, and then you take that into spiritual realms. It's like you can't get someone to understand something they're not ready to accept, or they're in the wrong position to accept. But I think also, before this starts to sound a bit too judgmental of other people and saying, well, they're just not on the same path as us, we're the special ones, kind of thing, I think the best way to apply that is to also think of it in our own personal terms, in that, like, we cannot be awakened if we ourselves are only pretending to be asleep. You know what I mean? Like, if you're getting in your own way, in your pathway, in your journey, if you're blocking yourself off by putting yourself in the wrong state and trying to pretend, like, you might even not realize that you are pretending to be asleep. That's not the point. The point is that once you do realize, you understand, kind of thing. It's like it's becoming aware of the hurdles you place in front of yourself.
And in keeping with, like, who is God? God is just you, and the God is within you. The first kind of obstacle you need to overcome is yourself.
Always, 100%. It's the in fact, you might even argue that's the only obstacle you have to overcome. Like, that's the entire journey, is getting past yourself.
Boom. That's I feel like I could explore that in depth even further and just go
Shout
deep
out to the
into
Navajo Nation.
Big up to them. Big up to them. Still here against all the odds.
Yeah.
Not just their nation, but all the other nations in that other country. They're doing, I wouldn't say they're necessarily doing well compared to how things are in Aotearoa, but they're still here. Their culture still exists. And shout out to all the indigenous cultures around the world. As two colonizers, we are sorry. That is the mindfulness. Let's get into some sport. And I am, there's only one angle I can take with this Ronald Volkman situation, because there is no Kiwi NRL angle. Ronald Volkman is not from Aotearoa, and the Dragons are the worst Kiwi NRL club. They are the 17th ranked club in my Kiwi NRL power rankings. So anyone listening, and you've been following a bit of Dragons shenanigans, like, you are a rugby league fan, you are an NRL fan, you are tuned into all the mishaps of the Dragons, you can also know they don't care about Aotearoa. They don't care about recruitment from Aotearoa. They are the least busy Kiwi NRL recruitment team in the whole NRL, last in my Kiwi NRL power rankings. So allow that to frame your whole perspective on what the Dragons are up to. I will cut out a lot of the rugby league, Aussie NRL kind of intricacies of what's happening here, and we'll keep it. I think we like to provide, like, quasi-experts views, opinions, insights for the casual fan. Like, we're trying to dive deep into matters, come out with a nugget for the casual fan. And so there's so much weird rugby league stuff in this story. that you don't need to know about. But there is this situation where there's a bit of angst against the Warriors for how they dealt with the Ronald Volkman leaving the Warriors, joining the Dragons, and he's got a major injury. Dragons didn't register his contract. Pretty shitty situation for Ronald Volkman. But at the end of the day, Ronald Volkman asked the Warriors for a release. And respectfully, you need to take responsibility for your own actions. And the thing is, a lot of these players, a lot of these athletes, they don't want to, because they have the agent, they have the manager. And I'm sorry, these are getting into the rugby league intricacies that I need to not dive into. Whether it was the agent, whether it was the player, whether the agent did the player wrong, whatever, the player needs to take responsibility for the actions of the agent, because the player is the boss of the agent. Ronald Volkman asked for a release from the Warriors. The Warriors granted him that release. That's it. Whatever part the Warriors are playing in this situation finishes there. You wanted to leave the Warriors. You got your wish. See you later. That's it. Anything else that happens after that, it's up to Volkman and his part and his crew, and then it's up to the Dragons. The key thing is Ronald Volkman requested a release from the Warriors. That's all that really matters here. And though, like, there is this other thing, the Warriors, they did apparently pay a bit of Volkman's contract out, or like contributed towards his deal with the Dragons. Like, Ronald Volkman's a New South Wales Cup half. So Ronald Volkman probably wasn't earning a lot of money in the NRL salary cap context. So maybe maxing out at 350, 400k, even that seems like too much for a New South Wales Cup half. So the Warriors may have paid like 20k, 50k. This is not one of the situations where you've got a player on 800k and then you're contributing 200k, 300k, 400k. Volkman is on a lower salary, like a bottom of the top 30 salary, and so the Warriors may have just paid him out like 20k, 50k, as I said. So I think that financial contribution is fairly minimal, but again, I don't see how the Warriors have done anything wrong when they bowed to the player. They granted him a release, and everything caught in a bit of a shitstorm after that. As the Dragons fan, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with it as you lay it out there. I do think it's been a strange situation because it's like dumb thing happened, and then everyone wants to blame each other, kind of thing. Like the Dragons are trying to blame the Warriors and saying they didn't tell them about the shoulder problems that were existing for Volkman when he left, which is another reason why Volkman's got to be very careful. Like because it's not just that he requested a release from the Warriors. He requested a release from what I understand was 2 more years on his contract with the Warriors to sign a 1-year contract with the Dragons, knowing he had a busted shoulder. He probably didn't know the extent of the busted shoulder, but he has busted that shoulder in the past, right? So he'd had shoulder reconstruction as a youngster, I think, at some point, like as I don't know, coming out of high school or something. Like it's an existing injury that's flared up again, or something like that. Super risky. And the reason it's risky is for this exact outcome, which is that you then fail a medical and get stuck in between 2 contracts. So the Dragons are trying to blame the Warriors for not telling them that this shoulder injury was worse than they expected. The Warriors are blaming the Dragons for saying, well, why did you announce the signing before you'd even done the medical? I think both of those things are fair points to make. I also think that the ultimate blame falls back upon Volkman and his agent, and probably more the agent than the player in this case. Like, you're right, the player's got to take responsibility. He is the boss of the agent, but the agent gives you advice, and this is not advice that an agent should be giving, which is take fewer years while you're under injury risk and get stuck in this dumb situation where the Dragons being stupid is par for the course. Like they always do stupid things, and announcing a signing before doing the medical properly, it just plays into this idea of like the Dragons have been struggling to sign players full stop. They wanted Adam Fanua-Blake, for example, from the Warriors and weren't able to get him.
This is intricate rugby league territory. So just
yeah, I suppose so. This is like them getting stressed and trying to announce a signing for a dude who has played, I checked this, 5 first grade games. He never played at all first grade before he signed with the Warriors, which is further evidence to the idea that he probably wasn't earning that much money. Hopefully the Warriors pay out still, that money goes towards him still. It was his salary that they were contributing to. So there's that. But yeah, now he's stuck without a contract this year, and no one's going to sign him until he can prove his fitness again, and he needs to fix his shoulder. And it's not a good situation, and it's one of those situations where I think everybody is at least a little bit in the wrong. While they're all trying to blame each other and say it's not our fault, it's your fault, I think everyone takes a little bit of blame on this, but ultimately it's like it's Ronald Volkman who suffers, isn't it? And he's taken some bad advice, and he's also accepted and acted on that bad advice, which is not really what you want to be doing. I mean, I'm baffled how someone could think this is the right time to do. I guess he thought he was getting first grade opportunities. I don't know, with Dragons. Maybe he might have been.
Hold that thought. Okay. I do have so I think I can explain that, but you're suggesting the Warriors are to blame in some regard.
I'm suggesting the Warriors are not blameless. Yeah, I don't think they're entirely at fault, but I do think perhaps they were happy to get rid of a player they knew that wasn't 100% and maybe took advantage of a dumb club and getting rid of them. I think they're probably the least to blame of all the parties, but I do think you can't say the Warriors are spotless and have acted perfectly because they knew he was injured. They might not have known the full extent of it, but also, yeah, he knew he was injured, but he's not going to say that because he wants to sign the new deal. It's the Dragons. Ultimately, it is also the Dragons' responsibility to figure out that he's injured, and they did eventually. They let him train first, which is madness. But he did train with apparently a yellow bib, which is the Universal Rugby League sign of "Don't tackle me, I'm only here on trial." Which I've learned now. I didn't know that.
Well, who cares? That's an intricate rugby league.
That's another intricacy.
I can't find any fault in the Warriors. An injured, again, word of warning to any player, any future athlete: if you're injured, don't ask for a release. That seems like the dumbest thing you can do. So the Warriors, you're kind of implying, and I think other people are implying, that the Warriors weren't upfront and clear about Volkman's injury status. So the Warriors know his injury status. Volkman knows his injury status. I'd imagine anyone who does any sort of, in this instant, due diligence or research knows Volkman's injury status. One team, one organization did not know that injury status. That is their fault. Now, if the Warriors were trying to push Volkman out, knowing that he was injured and hiding that information from other clubs and Volkman himself, and/or Volkman himself, then it's an issue.
Although even still, there's only 1 out of 16 other clubs that probably would have fallen for that. Everyone else just does the medical and finds it out.
Yeah, it's not like you need to go to some German medical center and run all these tests, and it's in an extremely expensive, these are run-of-the-mill contracting situations that every professional... They said
when he trained he couldn't even pass the ball properly, which is how they realized.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not, like you're saying, it's not difficult. It's kind of obvious.
Every professional sporting organization runs those tests. So it's not like that's out of the normal. And if you don't run those tests, you leave yourself exposed to the reason those tests exist. So I struggle to find any fault in what the Warriors have done. Volkman wanted a release while he was injured. That seems absolutely ridiculous and crazy. So why? Okay, so then we get to the timeline. Why would Ronald Volkman request a release at that stage. Well, the Dragons, they've got an opening. Talatau Amone, he's a criminal. He's not playing in the NRL. So that came to fruition. Who have the Warriors also brought in? This young kid from the Panthers, Luke Hansen, who has been training all summer, and he must be doing all right. If Luke Hansen's doing all right, training with the Warriors, then it is the job of Ronald Volkman's agent, because this is why you have an agent. You have an agent, a manager in professional sports who can find you another gig if you're not going to be playing NRL or first grade. So maybe the agent, the player, they were like, whoa, this Luke Hansen kid's pretty good. He might be in the New South Wales Cup team next year. Chanel Harris-Tavita's come back. I don't really know where I fit in. So we put the feelers out there for a couple of months, couple of weeks. No one really wants to nibble on those feelers, on the bait, because they also know Volkman's got a bit of an issue with his shoulder. Then suddenly the Dragons are into desperation mode because their half is a criminal, and they've released another young half, Jaden Sullivan, to the Tigers. So now they've got a whiff of desperation, so then they pounce on that move. But at the time, I was like, why would the Warriors grant that release to Ronald Volkman? Well, they've seen Luke Hansen train. He's a young half from the Penrith Panthers system. All the pedigree signs are immensely positive for Luke Hansen at the Warriors. And again, if the Warriors were trying to push Volkman out because of Luke Hansen's arrival, that would be an issue. So they bring in Luke Hansen. They know Volkman's buggered. So we'll shop Volkman around and we'll try to take advantage of like another club. That is kind of predatory behavior. But the way this has been portrayed by the Warriors release, so fair play, this is a Warriors perspective, but they're not going to, like, there's no reason for them to lie about it a few weeks ago. Volkman requested a release. And again, that's the most important thing, because that sets up how the whole storyline around this.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, there's things there we don't know how some of the dealings might have gone. I think it does seem like it was probably a relatively mutual thing, because Volkman wasn't necessarily going to play for the Warriors. Like, they certainly weren't upset to lose him. I'm happy to acquiesce, but yeah, I think from the sounds of this conversation, I find a little more fault in the Warriors, but I also don't know that that's like, it's not illegalities, you know. They've not done anything wrong necessarily. They've just maybe been a little bit shady or convenient with things, which shouldn't have been a factor. Because as you say, that stuff, Volkman knew he was injured. Agent must have known he was injured. Dragons should have figured it out straight away. No other team was seemingly trying to sign him at that stage. Like, it just, due diligence should have taken care of that. And I suspect every time a player leaves, there's always little bits of that where, like, maybe hide this little bit. Like, and it might not be an injury history. It might be like the idea that maybe you have a different transfer coming in that hasn't been done yet, and that's why you want to get rid of this guy before it makes it look like you're just fire selling. All these kind of things. There's always 100 different angles going down on any transaction. And I think the Warriors were a little bit shady with it. I think it's ultimately irrelevant as to what happened afterwards, because it shouldn't have mattered. The information should have been brought to light by other angles and from other angles, and it was eventually. The Dragons were so desperate for a signing that they jumped the gun. But I tell you who does benefit from this: Paul Turner's first grade prospects. You know, as for a club that only seems to have one half now. He's an option. He played his one game as a fullback last year, but he's, you know, back utility. He's played halves through reserve grade and stuff. We'll see how that goes, because there's not a lot of other Kiwi NRL angles to fall back upon with the Dragons, but maybe this is one that benefits one of Northland's best prospects.
Again, if a player asks for a release and the club provides all the information that is requested of them, there's no shadiness there.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, like it's yeah, I understand that you might think there's a bit of shadiness because you are a Dragons fan. That's all right. I'm putting my Warriors fan hat on, so we're coming at this from the two different angles. But yeah, so there's no point, debating it further. We're going to have different perspectives. But also the idea of Warriors shadiness, to me, it goes against all the vibes I'm getting out of Mount Smart as well. Because like they also took care of Volkman. If Volkman comes to them and says we need a release, but we need you to contribute X amount of money to make it happen, the Warriors don't have to do that. But they did it. And also the Warriors don't have to grant any releases. Fanua Blake, he wants a release straight away. They don't do it. Ben Hunt wants a release straight away from the Dragons. They don't do it. Like, you can be strict to the contracting conditions. You can also be welcoming to the best case scenario for that player. And the way the Warriors handled it, actually, to me, it shows how they go about their business. Yeah, you've found a better opportunity for you. We're going to let you go. We're going to grace you that release. And you also want us to help out with this, whether it's a salary cap thing or whether it's paying out the contract. You want us to help out with that? Yeah, we'll do that as well for you. So
apparently they've reached out with their welfare team as well to him since the shenanigans have gone down, which is also another positive reflection on the Warriors.
Exactly.
Didn't have to do that either.
Definitely did not. The Joseph Parker, he's got a fight coming up. Another fight. And we have some Joseph Parker momentum now, which I'm interested in because it's kind of coming at a diminishing momentum phase for City Kickboxing. I think Israel Adesanya will enter the mix again, but he's got a bit of a situation here in Aotearoa. Like, he doesn't really seem to be endearing himself to folks around Aotearoa at the moment. But like, City Kickboxing have a lot of fighters who have departed the UFC or have lost a few fights now. Carlos Ulberg's one of the main winners at City Kickboxing. And also you've got the boxing department there with Junior Fa, not necessarily winning fights either. So you've got that kind of side of Aotearoa combat sports sliding down a wee bit. Like, I still think they're a major factor in the global combat sports landscape, but they are, decreasing their influence a wee bit at a time when Joseph Parker's riding this massive wave of momentum that is largely his own doing, because he's winning fights, or he's won one fight, maybe 2 fights in a row, 3 fights in a row.
I think he's won about 4 in a row, but only one of them was like a big deal.
Well, that's right.
It was a very, very big deal.
Because again, that timeline's a bit longer, so it's kind of more recent activities that are diverging from what City Kickboxing's up to, their graph at the moment. But it's like largely due to Parker's own activity, his winning mahi, and what he's up to. But also there's a bit of momentum in the world of boxing, not necessarily what was previously building momentum with, celebrities boxing, which is still a big deal in Aotearoa in Australia. But now you've got like someone like Francis Ngannou entering the boxing space and having success, building buzz. Obviously, Middle Eastern money's coming into it as well. So there is this kind of momentum, a wave of momentum in the boxing world. And Joseph Parker's riding that wave. So what can you tell us about his next bout and how it fits into that wider wave of momentum?
Well, I think a lot of that momentum in boxing, in the sport of boxing, particularly heavyweight boxing, pretty much all of that momentum probably at the moment is coming from Saudi Arabia, just pumping crazy dollars into it, which on the one hand, sports washing. On the other hand, if they're going to spend money on it, at least they are putting good cards together and whatnot, even if it's still like jury's out on whether the sports washing thing actually improves your reputation or just brings like more attention to it, because no one really cares where a sports event's being held. But this will be the this being the upcoming Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou fight, on which Joseph Parker will be the co-headliner, with arguably an even better fight against Chinese heavyweight prospect. Well, he's not even a prospect. He's China's top heavyweight, Zhili Zhang. That is going to be the third major heavyweight card that the Saudis have put on, and the third in a row that Joseph Parker has fought on. I don't think he's going to be able to get there. Actually, no, it will be the fourth card because Tyson Fury versus Alexander Usyk will be before that. That one is in about a month's time, mid-February, and Parker versus Zhang is early March. So he's obviously not going to be able to fight on the third of four cards, but he will have fought on 3 out of 4 when that swings back around. I think Anthony Joshua might also have been on 3 of those. I can't remember what the first one was, what the headliner was for the first one, but in fact, it might have, yeah, who cares? I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to try to figure it out as I talk. Important thing is that there has been a big focus on this stuff, and Joseph Parker has kept himself right in there amongst it. And his momentum pretty much entirely comes from having beaten Deontay Wilder, which wrecked one of the other cards because this was supposed to be Joshua versus Wilder, but then Parker's win knocked Wilder out of contention. There was talk that Wilder might fight Zhang. Instead, Parker's fighting Zhang. So this is a quick turnaround for a dude who fought, like, this is less than 3 months turnaround from having fought Deontay Wilder for the best win of his career to then fighting Zhilei Zhang, who is 40 years old. And the big concern about him is that he left his pro career too late and might have missed his sort of golden period there. Either that or he's in his golden period right now and is like blossoming later because he left it late. He had a long amateur career, and then I think just one of those dudes who took too long in getting in with the like sort of get ready fights, as opposed to Francis Ngannou, whose first fight was against Tyson Fury and the second fight's against Anthony Joshua. Like, no need to get ready. Admittedly, he lost to Fury, but I think it sort of feels like a moral win for his inexperience against the best heavyweight in the world to have taken him the distance, really rocked him, and actually been a bit unlucky with how that went down. It's another risky fight for Parker. It's another one of those ones where it's like he's just like the Wilder fight. It's like, well, the options on the table, might as well. But also, like, he's got something to lose now, which he didn't necessarily have against Deontay Wilder, because he lost to Wilder, he'd just stay where he was. Loses to Zhang, then some of his prospects get upset a little bit. And Zhilei Zhang, his most 2 recent victories were pretty convincing destructions of Joe Joyce. Joe Joyce, prior to losing twice to Zhilei Zhang, had beaten up Joseph Parker. So he's fighting a guy who's just twice beaten the guy who most recently beat him. So I guess if you beat Zhang, it wipes out the Joyce loss in a way. If you don't, though, it just looks like, well, you took on a fight against a dude who beat a guy who proved himself better than you, at least on the day when you fought him. So there's risky business there. However, Zhilei Zhang is the current WBO mandatory challenger. I don't know when they're going to get around to having a mandatory challenge for it, but it would put Parker in position to where he might be one fight away from competing for a title bout again. In fact, competing for the title bout that he previously held, because it was the WBO that he won back in the day when he beat Andy Ruiz. If he doesn't, like, I don't know how a loss here would disrupt this, but it seems like he might also be in line to fight for the WBF mandatory against Filip Hrgović down the line as well, which don't know when that would be. The general way of how these things go is that, because all the bouts are held by Fury and Usyk at the moment, and generally, like, the individual bouts will have their like mandatory challenger every year or two. You gotta defend the bout. That's how they try to keep it competitive. But they do also say like a unification bout trumps a mandatory defense. So Fury versus Usyk will be for all the bouts. However, there is a rematch clause in that fight, which is almost certain. Like, it would take a disaster for that not to be picked up, because it's going to be a huge event. It's probably going to be a really good fight. If it's close in any way, whoever loses is going to pick up that rematch. No dramas. That's going to happen. And then that's when the IBF have been like, well, we'll let you fight for it the first time, but if you rematch, we're going to strip that bout and let someone else have it. So that potentially could be an avenue for Parker as well if he fights Hrgović for the vacant bout. Probably the fight after this. I don't know how soon that would be. I guess it depends on what Fury and Usyk do, but he's got a couple different avenues here, and I don't know if that would get disrupted because Hergovich is the mandatory challenger and Parker is the sort of like next up free rank, the next up guy who would be free on the rankings. He might dip down the rankings and lose that opportunity, but then also he might also get to fight for the WBO belt sometime in a similar case. So he's got a couple different avenues to get back, and it's like I don't know where people would have said he was in his career 2 months ago, but it probably wasn't 2 fights away from fighting for another heavyweight championship bout. But apparently that's where he is now.
Rugby league intricacies, a lot of deep in the mangroves boxing intricacies there as well. Main thing, this is a really important fight for Joseph Parker because it could propel him back near the top of the division. The heavyweight division, obviously different organizations, different belts and whatnot, but this is I think, who did he fight in his last fight? Deontay Wilder.
Deontay Wilder.
So that, I don't know, given who Deontay Wilder is now, I don't know if that fight is more important than this up-and-coming fight, considering who the Chinese geezer is. You said he's beaten Joe Joyce twice, who Joe Joyce defeated Joseph Parker. Like, this upcoming fight feels just as important, if not more important, than the Deontay Wilder fight, given everything that could follow as you laid out there. So good job on the boxing intricacies.
Yeah, to summarize it in a sentence, I would say I think this fight is less glamorous than fighting Wilder and also more difficult.
Beauty. The Breakers, the New Zealand Breakers, unfortunately, they have reverted back to the team we thought they were. And you did lay this out, I think, in our last podcast. Nice little stretch, cute, you're winning games, everything's honkadory. Next up, you're facing maybe two of the better teams. What's going to happen there? 2 losses, including an absolute stinker against Sydney. And of course, as we always note, the Breakers, the least New Zealand, Aotearoa Kiwi franchise basically in existence right now. So again, if you're stressing about the Warriors not having enough Kiwis in their team, switch your attention to the New Zealand Breakers. I don't want to talk about the Breakers. They stink. The Sydney Kings, who defeated the Breakers, I don't know if they've got any Kiwis in their team. Do they have any Kiwis?
They have Sam Timmins right at the bottom of their roster, who did get, because they won by so much against the Breakers, did get a minute or two at the end of that game.
And
so that was nice.
He's a former Breaker.
He's a former Breaker.
And he's from New Zealand.
Indeed.
So he
just signed with, I think he might have re-signed with Otago. I can't remember, but he signed up for the next, what do you call them, NBL season.
But he was a Kiwi who was with the Breakers, but he wasn't good enough to stay with the Breakers because he's a Kiwi. So he went to Sydney, where they do like Kiwis, because a lot of these Australian teams do love a Kiwi. I'm looking at the top of the NBL rankings, and my question to you is going to be break down some of the best Kiwis in the NBL. Brisbane, they are 5th. And I know they've got that Tyrell Harrison dude who's a big centre. He's really good. Tasmania are 3rd. Sydney's 5th. Sorry, Sydney's 4th, Brisbane is 5th, Tasmania is 3rd. We know that Tommy Vodanovic has signed with Tasmania, I believe, so watch out for that. Perth, we've talked about them. High concentration of Kiwis, Hiram Harris, Ty Webster most notably at the moment. And then Melbourne, maybe the most Kiwi franchise, considering they've got a Kiwi coach, they've got Shea Illy, and I'm not sure if they've got anyone else, so I might have just countered my own argument there. Let's start with Melbourne. Any other Kiwis besides Shea Illy catching your attention?
Well, they don't have a Kiwi coach. They got Dean Vickerman as coach, but he did formerly coach the Breakers, so there is a Kiwi strong connection. I think.
Is he an Aussie?
He is an Australian, but I think they have a Kiwi assistant coach, or at least they have in the past. Like you'd have to check that while I'm talking because I can't remember. I don't keep enough track of the coaches, but just to suffice to say, 3 or 4 teams have Kiwi assistant coaches this season. The Breakers are not one of them.
Yeah,
the Breakers don't have a Kiwi assistant. That goes without saying, perhaps, I guess, if you've been tracking the Breakers anyway.
I've just had my mind's been blown. I thought Dean Vickerman was just true blue Kiwi for as long as I can remember him being a basketball coach. So shout out Dean Vickerman, true blue Aussie. Back on Melbourne.
So Melbourne have Shea Illy. the number one Kiwi in the NBL, has been for a couple of years, and is having one of his best seasons this year. So nothing's changed. He's as good as ever. Didn't play against the Breakers because he had a minor concussion, and because he's had a history of concussions, they want to play that safe. So hopefully he'll be back this week. But if he's not, that'll be why. It's just an abundance of caution from a team who has earned the right to be cautious because they're just that far ahead of everyone else. Although Perth are closing in, I think.
Yeah, don't worry, don't worry.
They've still won three more games than Perth because Perth had a bad start. So yeah, Shea Ili's there. Flynn Cameron is there.
Yeah, that's
Flynn Cameron in his first season as a professional, son of Pero Cameron. Obviously, he's doing tidy things as a rookie. Some games where he's more influential than others. Some games where he doesn't really play at all. But he's been there or thereabouts all season, learning his trade. Chose to sign with Melbourne, obviously, whereas the Breakers don't seem to want to sign dudes of his ilk coming out of the college stuff.
Yeah.
And then also another ex-Breaker, Rob Lowe, spent the first sort of third of the season there as an injury replacement, but he's finished that stint now. But was really good while he was there, and has also re-signed on for another NBL season. So he's supposedly retired he came out of retirement from the NBL to play for Melbourne because it was a short-term deal. And apparently hasn't retired from New Zealand NBL at least, so that's cool. We still get to see him because he is the reigning MVP of that. So there's 3 Kiwis who have played for Melbourne this year.
Yeah, you always manage to squeeze in Rob Lowe. Important to know
he was there.
He was there, but he's not there now. So
there.
If you're watching the NBL rocking and rolling, Rob Lowe is not there at the moment.
They did leave the door open to him possibly coming back at some stage, although he seemed less keen on that than the team. So if one of the big guys gets injured, though, that is a possibility. It's not out of the realms of contention.
And I think that does highlight a nice little Melbourne, let alone Perth. They got the pipelines to New Zealand. They got direct communication, they got direct scouting, they know the Kiwi basketballers who are there, and they have the relationships to the point where someone like Rob Lowe, hey mate, we need a hand, can you help us? Yeah, I don't want to, but I will help you. That is how the best NBL teams, again, the best Kiwi NRL teams, these NBL teams, they've got their tentacles throughout Aotearoa, and they do have a lot of those kind of pipelines and relationships set up. We talked about Perth last week because they did smoke the Breakers. Don't think there's anything to add there.
Well, no, a little bit, because they had another convincing win this week. Can't remember who they beat, but as part of that, Ty Webster scored 20 points. So fantastic effort from him. Haram Harris, again, limited minutes because he got into foul trouble. But I worked out they've won 10. They're 10-2 in games where Haram Harris plays at least 10 minutes, and they're 8-0 in games where Ty Webster plays at least 20 minutes. So when those two have been prominent, as they have been for the last couple of months, because Perth, remember, the first month or so was terrible, and there was the one game they got booed out of their home stadium after losing, and things looking pretty shocking at that point. Everything has turned around. They've just stayed the course. They've elevated. Haram Harris was one of the things that started changing things, was him getting more minutes, but him specifically also getting starters minutes. Not like starters minutes over the course of the game, but just being in the starting lineup, setting a tone, bringing that energy for the start, and giving the rest of the guys something to build from. And he does commit a lot of fouls, so he does get limited to 10-15 minute range most weeks, but they're also very important minutes at the start of each half to sort of just get the team up and rolling with his energy. And yeah, Ty Webster has come in beautifully recently. He's playing some excellent stuff, best stuff he's played since he was last at the Breakers, and only a couple minutes at the end of the game. But Corey Webster did make his return from injury. He's been out with an ankle injury for a while, but he did get a couple minutes in garbage time of that game just to, start to get the ball rolling for him as well, as did DP Jack Andrew, another Kiwi guy. Plays for, did he play for Canterbury last year, or one of the South Island teams anyway? He's a Kiwi development player over at Perth, who also have Dante Russo-Nance, who played a few games at the start of the year. Haven't seen anything from him since, so I don't know what he's doing. But he did recently he signed with Otago for the upcoming season, because obviously Otago and Perth Wildcats, they have some shared ownership, which is why Ty Webster played for Otago last season, and et cetera, et cetera. They've got a bit of a, a flow-on thing going there. So speaking of Kiwi links, speaking of the development pathways, there's a very, very obvious direct one for the Perth Wildcats right there.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there as like some little brainwave I had, and there's an actual
No, there's
pipeline
a
there between
there's a real
Perth
tangible
and
one right there.
Otago. Let's just like there's obviously some other Kiwis in lesser performing teams. Tasmania, has Tommy V played for Tasmania? And are there any other Kiwis catching your attention for Tasmania? The Jack Jumpers, the Jumping Jacks.
Well, Walter Brown's a DP, but the development players don't play that often. You know, they're not necessarily on the roster every time, and when they do play, it's generally because it's garbage time. But he's got a few appearances in there this season. Tall Black's wingman there, and no, Tommy V hasn't played yet, but he was on the card for the most recent game. So I don't know if that meant he was there and just a little bit too soon, or I don't know. But I would expect a debut this season because they did sign him as like an injury replacement. So they obviously need his minutes. You know, they didn't sign him just to come and hang around for work experience. They want him out there. So I think this week is probably the opportunity for a Tom Vodanovic debut. But that is an important signing, I guess, from the Kiwi perspective here, because that does mean that across the top or all the top teams, basically. I think every team has a New Zealander except maybe Illawarra. I don't think do, but it just shows the proliferation there. And now Vodanovic, because obviously Tasmania only had one dude as DP before, Vodanovic will be getting some minutes. So that is now also not just a Kiwi on the roster, but a Kiwi who's actually going to be playing for them each week and doing some stuff.
Beauty, nice stuff there. Let's touch on the Blackcaps quickly, because I did see in the Kane Williamson press release about his injury, which we should all note, Kane Williamson didn't play any T20s last year for Aotearoa. So as difficult as it is to replace Kane Williamson, the Blackcaps have been playing T20 cricket without Kane Williamson for a year. And someone else can do Kane Williamson's job in the T20 team. Like, as good as he is, I'm confident someone else can do that job, batting number 3. But it is important to note, internationally, I don't think a lot of people realize that Kane Williamson is already picking his spots on when he plays for the Blackcaps. And well, not necessarily last year, because he was. Yeah, what am I saying? He was injured last year, and he was having his freakish recovery from an ACL
there
injury.
were T20 series around that though, which he was available. Because I looked into this, there was games he didn't play. Like the home summer, for example.
But the Blackcaps played T20 cricket using 28 players last year. Kane Williamson was not one of them. So replacing Kane Williamson in the T20 team, it is possible. And of course, we do have confirmation of Blackcaps' priorities, which are Test cricket. Even though there's a T20 World Cup coming up, Kane Williamson is being rested for the Test summer. Kyle Jamieson is being rested for the Test summer. And Trent Boult remains part of New Zealand's plans for 2024, for the 2024 T20 World Cup. So you have been big on the semantics, the verbiage around Trent Boult. It does seem like Gary Stead, Sam Wells, what we have noted about how they discuss Trent Boult, it has leaned towards him still being in the mix. And if he's still in the mix for the T20 World Cup, I think it's going to be fantastic for the Blackcaps. And I do have a funky old Blackcaps T20 first 11 that I'll probably discuss in the subscriber pod tomorrow. I want to get Michael Bracewell, Ish Sodhi, Mitchell Santner, Glenn Phillips in the same T20 team for a T20 World Cup in the Caribbean. That is my objective, and I've built out a first 11 with that possible, which is even more impressive if you've got Trent Boult joining Tim Southee in the seam attack of that team. Just something to watch out for, because those dudes are all pretty good at cricket. And spinny conditions, Caribbean T20 World Cup, we know what's happening there. So Trent Boult might still be in the mix, which is good. Any words? I don't really think you need to say anything about Trent Boult other than confirming your suspicions that he's still in the mix.
Well, was that like a specific? Because I didn't read the full press release. I just took then the tweet version afterwards, which is Williamson rested, minor hamstring, back for test. Will Young replaces him. Sort of expected information. Was that like a? Did they make a specific mention of Trent Bolt in the thing? Which
The Crick
uh,
Info yarn has this quote. It says, Stead also confirmed that Trent Bolt remains part of the plans. I don't know what was said in the New Zealand cricket side. Yeah, I don't think they care. It's more Crick Info stressing about Trent Bolt, as they like to do with folks like Kane Williamson as well. So this isn't important. Who cares? But this is not worth us discussing right now. The Williamson thing, something to watch out for is Devon Conway's lack of form. I set it up as Tim Seifert versus Finn Allen. You took the Finn Allen route. I took the Tim Seifert route. Finn Allen's in great form, so credit to him. He's kind of snuffed out the Tim Seifert challenge. But it's also been alluded to that Tim Seifert will take the gloves from Devon Conway at some point, which might be today for the third T20 International. And Devon Conway, the dirty secret. So again, I've written about this in the newsletter and the Blackcaps mid-series write-up. A lot of Finn Allen doesn't face enough balls chat. A lot of Kane Williamson's strike rate chat. Neither of which is the most pressing storyline of Blackcaps batting.
and also both of which are related.
Correct. The most important Blackcaps batting thing right now is Devon Conway's lack of form. His annual test averages have been decreasing since his debut. His T20 averages have been decreasing every year since his debut. He didn't score many runs after that big old knock against England to start the World Cup. So the most important thing for the Blackcaps right now is Devon Conway and his lack of runs, which might see Tim Seifert come in for him as a wicketkeeper. But we don't need to go deep into that because that might be already have happened by the time you're listening to this. Not sure what's happening. Well, I know what's happening with the bowling, where I'm seeing a lot of Adam Milne opportunities for him, which is good. But to kind of wiggle into the Super Smash, as I alluded to just before, Michael Bracewell's a really interesting cricketer that I'm watching in the Super Smash because he's come back into the mix playing good cricket. He did drop a catch, though, which was ridiculous. I don't think I've seen Michael Bracewell drop too many catches. But again, heading towards the T20 World Cup, he is someone in the Super Smash who folks should be watching closely because he has a realistic chance of making that T20 World Cup squad. And again, Rachin Ravindra's the hype man of Blackcaps cricket. Michael Bracewell, I think, is a better player right now than Rachin Ravindra. He's a better spinner, he's a better hitter, and he's a fantastic fielder usually. So, and he's also got the maturity and kind of comfort with the stage in the arena. Although Rachin Ravindra did his World Cup thing, fantastic. I just think Michael Bracewell's better. And I do want Michael Bracewell in that World Cup team. So wiggling into Super Smash stuff here, watch out for Michael Bracewell with the Wellington Firebirds as someone who can get into the T20 team from outside the current squad. You do have someone like Doug Bracewell who has the talent to be in that team, but I think he needs injuries and opportunities to swing his way. He needs Adam Milne, Ben Sears, Tim Southey, Matt Henry, even Ben Lister, who is one of the best seamers in Super Smash right now, fantastic bowler. As we always say, he does a lefty seam thing where he moves the ball away from right-handers. Trent Bolt moves the ball into right-handers. Ben Lister swing, angle, and seam away from the right-handers, which is a really impressive skill set, or quirky skill set. I'd say, like, as far as bowling goes, Ben Lister's probably ahead of Doug Bracewell, but Doug Bracewell has the lower order hitting thing in his favor. And we've seen in the series against Pakistan, Adam Milne has been given the opportunity to bat maybe 7 or 8, depending on Santner's availability. So they've put a lot of faith in Adam Milne's skill set. He's a good T20 bowler. I think he's a squad member for the World Cup, but he's getting the lower order hitting slots at the moment. And that's where I think Doug Bracewell offers value, but Doug Bracewell needs things to go in his favour, whereas Michael Bracewell can play his way into the World Cup squad. Like, he was already one of the top 15 Blackcaps prior to his Achilles injury and his freaky comeback. So he just needs to play to his level, and I think he can work his way in. Again, whereas Doug Bracewell, his cousin, needs the stars to align to get in the mix, but they're both there or thereabouts in the Super Smash. Do you have any other kind of Blackcaps angles to that Super Smash? Because I did write about this morning, the best Blackcaps and White Ferns in the Super Smash. Let me just throw out some names that... Yeah, well, do you have any other kind of Super Smash, Blackcaps adjacent thoughts, ideas, maybe Michael Bracewell, anything you want to discuss weaving the Blackcaps into the Super Smash?
Well, I'm all in on the let's get Michael Bracewell to the Caribbean for the T20 World Cup idea. I think that's... I think he would be a massive boost to the team there. We've spoken many times about how much he was missed at the ODI World Cup, and I think arguably Caribbean conditions are even more in his favor there, where you get a little bit more bounce and let him get under that ball and clear some boundaries, as well as his tidy little off spinners, which I don't know you'd see too much in a T20. I don't know you'd see too much of him needing to bowl, but he might. It would depend on the lineup, because you could pick him as one of your 5 bowlers, certainly, but there's good bowling depth, and the seamers will get a little bit more in those conditions, I would think, than in India.
I don't think you're getting much more bounce in the Caribbean. Like, it's pretty low and slow in the Caribbean.
Compared to India, not compared to like Perth or anything. If they were playing in those American drop-in pitches, you certainly would be, but the Blackcaps aren't. They're hanging out in like Guyana and Trinidad, so yeah, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think he'd go great there, and I would like to see him in there, and I think he will be in that squad as long as he sort of proves his form and fitness before then, and that's so far going as planned. It's been solid in the Super Smash so far, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a big innings to follow. I wouldn't mind Doug Bracewell in that squad either, but I agree. I think it probably requires an injury or two for him to creep up the pecking order, but he's certainly a dude who's sticking around, and he's batting as well as he ever has, and he's bowling pretty tidily as well. So he's one of those guys who's sort of in that position where you might fade away, like you might just sort of like duck into being a little bit more of a not a temporary guy, but just those Blackcaps opportunities might start not appearing so much, and he obviously missed out for a while with injuries earlier in his career. But he's just playing great cricket and staying in the mix. I have been meaning to ask you for a couple of weeks though, because there's been a few guys who did, like you mentioned, the 28 players that played last year, and a lot of a couple of tours that weren't at full banger Blackcaps there. But that's where you test out the depth and start to see who sinks or swims or whatever. One dude who definitely earned his way in there, but wasn't actually very good for the Blackcaps. And from what I've noticed, I don't think he's really done anything the Super Smash season either. I'm guessing Chad Bowes wasn't on your list of best performing Blackcaps in Super Smash this season?
No, he is not. And he hasn't been that great for Canterbury. Like, the Cantabrian with the most to play for is Cole McConchie. Cole McConchie, fantastic all-rounder. He's basically Michael Bracewell, just not quite as powerful or as good a spinner, but he's still a very good cricketer. Chad Bowes, he's got 37 runs at an average of 6 and a strike rate of 84 in the Super Smash. And this is a bloke who, as you said, he earned his way into the Blackcaps through his domestic performances. But he's not doing a whole lot in the Super Smash this summer. And Canterbury have been underperforming, so there's a few wrinkles as to why. Chad Bowes played 6 ODIs and 11 T20s, averaging 16 in ODIs, 17 in T20s. So I don't think he's quite in the equation right now. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just, it seems like he had a chance and he didn't necessarily take it, whereas others did at least enough to stick around. And or if you don't in the first stint of the Blackcaps, you at least come back and score some domestic runs, take some domestic wickets, and remind people why you got picked in the first place, and take the learnings from your first opportunity and put them to use the next time that comes around. I'm not sure that's something that's necessarily going to happen to Chad Bowes now. I think he might have.
That's all right. Who cares?
He had a window and he missed it, but so it goes.
But that is also a reason why Canterbury might not be performing as good as they would hope in the Super Smash, because let me pull up the table. I don't think Canterbury are in the top 3 at the moment. This is a rest day, so we do have a little space to talk about Super Smash. Canterbury are 4th, 4 points behind Central Districts. I think like the most impressive players for Canterbury, Henry Nichols has been good, so shout out to him. But you've also got like Zach Foulkes, Mitch Hay, Bevan Jacobs, Will O'Rourke. A lot of like good young players. But it's, again, as we always say, it's not necessarily conducive to winning games. And those players have chimed in. They have contributed to the overall Canterbury performance. But if you want to be winning games, like look at the top of the Super Smash men's table, Auckland. Who are their best players? Louis Dalport, 35 years old. Dunru Ferns, nudging 30. You've got Rob O'Donnell, T20 batting average legend. Sean Solier. They did have Lockie Ferguson for a while. He's fantastic. So Auckland are a very good Super Smash team right now with, like, they have Jock McKenzie, brother of Canterbury's Angus McKenzie, 2 very talented cricketers. And obviously there's a lot of noise about Jock McKenzie's dual code ability as well. Jock McKenzie's kind of their main youngster off the top of my head. So Louis Dalport, it's a bit of a hot take, but he's kind of Auckland's best spinner, and that includes Eddie Ashok. So just keep that. Has he
played much Super Smash, Ashok? I don't think he's
played
since he was in the Blackcaps
this season. He hasn't played yet in the Super Smash. But even in Plunkett Shield, Dalport played 2 games and finished as one of their leading wicket takers with a better average than Ashok. So watch out for Louis Dalport. But again, this thing about Auckland, a lot of very solid professionals in that team. That's how you win games. Let's go to the second team, Wellington. Peter Younghusband, Nathan Smith, Logan Van Beek. They do have, and then their youngsters are disgustingly dominant, like a Tim Robinson, leading run scorer. Nick Kelly's a professional. Troy Johnson, he's only played 1 game, so he took that catch, but he's only played 1 game. But you've got guys, again, Michael Bracewell, Snedden, McPeak. These dudes are all just certified domestic professionals, and Central Districts, the most certified professional domestic team of them all, to be honest. Like Dane Cleaver, one of the leading run scorers, Doug Bracewell, Ajaz Patel, Jaden Lennox, Tom Bruce. Who am I missing?
Bevan Small, of course.
Bevan Small, the OG, he's there. Will Young was scoring runs for them. He's certified domestic trooper as well. The only real youngster for CD at the moment is Will Clark. And what do you know? Will Clark, one of my favorite young cricketers in Aotearoa, not a reliable contributor. That's all right. But young players are going to struggle to consistently dominate the Super Smash. And the good teams do integrate young players, but as we've explored with the 3 best teams, there's a lot of experience, a lot of maturity in those teams. Like CD's bowling attack, Doug Bracewell, Bevan Small, Blair Tickner, Ajaz Patel, Jaden Lennox. That's all just certified domestic troopers who are very good at what they do. Talking about the cross-code stuff, CD versus Auckland yesterday, Curtis Heafy also played first 15 rugby. I think he played for Palmerston North Boys High School. And now he's playing CD Stags. So I'm pretty confident in that kind of take. Like, there is a lot of young talent. We do big up the young talent. We saw Matt Fisher, fantastic against Wellington, just ripping through. I think it was Cullen McLaughlin to take some stumps out of the ground. Christian Clark was playing for ND. Zach Folks, Will Clark, Muhammad Abbas, Tim Robinson. All these dudes are pretty good. Jock McKenzie. Like, there's a lot of really good young cricketers, and I will always celebrate these young cricketers as with any other youngster who is supremely talented and also a good chap, good wahine. There's a lot of good talent there, but the best of the best are usually older players. And that is on display in the top 3 teams of the men's Super Smash, especially considering like who are the players who are going to add to the Blackcaps T20 team. It is Michael Bracewell. It might be Doug Bracewell. It is Will Young coming in to replace Kane Williamson. Like, these are the dudes who can step up for a game, a series, a World Cup. And again, as we always say, I don't think it's good or bad. It just is what it is. You want the best players playing for New Zealand. And who else is going to come into the mix? Jimmy Neesham, currently playing in South Africa. Like, the players who add to the Blackcaps are older players, and that's there's nothing wrong with that. They are the players who score the most runs and take the most wickets, and they are the reason why Auckland, Wellington, CD are the 3 best teams in the Super Smash right now.
And why the Blackcaps are so good with a bunch of dudes who are all around 30 and over, which, not a coincidence. You put their years together, you just figure things out at some point. Like Will Young, who quick stat on Will Young. I was not 100% sure on this because I was struggling to find like isolated sort of numbers here. But I think because he scored 100 the other day, and I touted last week maybe Michael Bracewell might get the fast track back into the Blackcaps in place of Williamson, but in place of Clarkson, who was in place of Williamson, who got injured. But then Will Young, in between that happening and Clarkson getting replaced, Will Young scores 100, which was his second Super Smash 100 because he got one, it was either last year or the year before as well. I was trying to figure out who has scored multiple domestic T20 centuries in New Zealand before. And as far as I can tell, the only other players who've done it before him are Brendan McCullum, Devon Conway, and Glenn Phillips. So that's not just good company. That's like world-class elite T20 company that Will Young is hanging out at. So pretty handy. It's probably his weakest of the 3 formats. Maybe I will see with the test stuff but his first class stuff is fantastic. But that's just Will Young for you. He does a little bit of everything. Format to format, he's outstanding.
Swashbuckling Will Young. The women's Super Smash is moving and grooving as well. Wellington top of the table, Central Districts, Otago third, and then there's a bit of a drop off, 4 points between Otago and Canterbury. Then you've got Auckland and Northern Districts. So think that top 3 is set, especially with the way Canterbury are playing at the moment. Not a whole lot of they've had a few collapses, let's just say that. Obviously Canterbury capitulation amongst other things, but the main story from the women's Super Smash is Amelia Kerr just dominating everything. She is first for wickets. She is first for runs. She has the most 50s, 4 50s, and she's got a fifer, so she's got the most fifers, but she's actually got 2 fifers. So she's doing all right, Amelia Kerr. It's a pleasure to watch Amelia Kerr play cricket. She's got like full 360 shots. She's in complete control of her batting mahi. She's powerful. She can punch through the offside. Anything short is getting hit out to the boundary on the leg side as well. Spins the ball both ways, which is always useful. Leggy with the doosra, the googly. And the thing I like watching about Amelia Kerr play cricket, as captain, she is impacting games with her fielding placements, how she leads the team in the field, but she's also like she's got this thing where she like growls for runs, where it's like she's easily the most vocal women's cricketer we've got right now. and that is like evident. Like when she's batting, it's like yes, no. Like it's all very vocal. It's all very loud. It's all very kind of dominating of the game, and it's to me it all comes together for like a presence on the field. And Amelia Kerr's got the runs, she's got the wickets, but she's also got the presence as the best player in women's cricket in Aotearoa, which I think is pretty damn impressive considering we've known Amelia Kerr's a legend for a long time now. We've known about her skills, we've known about her ability, we've learned about her world-class batting, which has taken over the White Ferns, and she's emerged as the best White Ferns player kind of last year, and then coming into the Super Smash, her presence on the field, her performances, everything about what she's doing in the Super Smash is kind of solidifying herself as the dominating figure of women's cricket in Aotearoa. And it's also interesting, Amelia Kerr's performances for Wellington are coming without Sophie Devine. So Amelia Kerr is filling that void, but she also needs to like take her Blaze team with her to the finals, because that is the standard for Wellington Blaze cricketers, winning competitions, winning the Super Smash. And usually Sophie Devine is that presence. She is that dominating figure to take them to championships. But right now it's Amelia Kerr. And Amelia Kerr is doing it without Sophie Devine, which is pretty sensational if you ask me. Other good batters, Suzie Bates and Maddie Green. They're pretty good at batting. You've got some overseas imports with Holly Armitage and Chamari Atapatu among the leading run scorers, but it's all kind of White Ferns there. You've got Amelia Kerr, Suzie Bates, Maddie Green, Armitage, Kate Anderson, Frances Mackay, Georgia Plummer, Atapatu, and then Hannah Rowe. Obviously, Frances Mackay is not quite in the White Ferns mix at the moment. It's a bit unrealistic to put her in that category, even though she's got the talent. But it's good to see Kate Anderson, recent White Fern, she's scoring runs. Georgia Plummer, the young White Fern, she is tapping into her potential as a supporting role alongside Amelia Kerr and Hannah Rowe. Good batting from Hannah Rowe. With the ball, the four best White Fern spinners are are among the best bowlers in Super Smash. But it's a very much a young bowler situation. So the best bowlers, just straight up, I don't know where to put the cutoff, so I'll just list the top few names. Amelia Kerr, Lee Kasprick, Skye Bowden, Sarah Asmussen, Rosemary Meir, Emma Black, Zara Jetley, PJ Watkins, Gabby Sullivan, Eden Carson, Fran Jonas, Leah Tahuhu, Marama Downs, Jess Watkin, Molly Lowe. A lot of young seamers there. Bowden, Black, Watkins, Downs and Lowe, Sullivan. The spinners there, aside from Sarah Asmussen, the spinners are all White Fern spinners, including Lee Kasprick, who is second to Amelia Kerr for wickets. I don't think Lee Kasprick's going to command a recall to the White Ferns as much as we wanted to. Eden Carson and Fran Jonas are also very good bowlers. So you've got three high-quality spinners for the White Ferns ahead of Lee Kasprick. But then that seam group's really interesting because the White Fern seamers, aside from Leah Tahuhu primarily, the White Fern seamers aren't really dominating Super Smash right now. But then you've got Rosemary Meir, 9 wickets, near the top of the wicket-taking charts. She's someone to watch out for because she hasn't played for the White Ferns since 2022. But she's a pretty good bowler. She's got a bit of pace, bit of movement. She is someone to watch out for because she is playing a good cricket for CD, and the table was Wellington, CD, Otago. So like Jess Kerr, the chances of her playing her best cricket in finals is high. Like she's got that championship pedigree with Wellington. I think she can perform pretty strongly in the finals. Then you've got CD, who have Hannah Rowe, Rosemary Meir, and Claudia Green. So which one of those seamers steps up in the finals will be very interesting. Right now, it's Rosemary Meir as their best seamer. Then you go Otago. They've got Hayley Jensen. Hayley Jensen's not really doing a whole lot at the moment, but she is a veteran White Fern who could step up in finals. But they've also got Emma Black, who is their leading wicket taker. Yes, the leading wicket taker for Otago and their best seamer. So what she does in the finals will be very interesting. Let alone like what other teams who will have a couple of games to play. You know, Auckland obviously have Molly Penfold. Canterbury have got Gabby Sullivan as well as Leah Tahuhu. And Northern Districts have Marama Downs, who's been fantastic. Good line, good length, bit of nibble from her. The funkiest thing about Women's Super Smash is which seam bowler wants to step up. Because, again, batting-wise and spin bowling-wise, Amelia Kerr, best player. You've also got the White Ferns leading the way with the batting, and you've got the best spinners in New Zealand are performing in the Super Smash, as well as Sarah Asmussen. The one thing that isn't very clear at the moment is the best seamer position. Because the White Ferns seamers aren't really dominating, and you've got a lot of young up-and-coming seamers who are performing really well, and you've also got Rosemary Meir, who does have White Ferns experience. She's playing at a high level as well. So it's very interesting. Obviously, the context of the Super Smash, which teams win, any themes, any kind of, you know, Wellington's a really good Super Smash organization, Blaze and Firebird, so that's something to watch out for. But I think the most interesting thing across both competitions is the White Fern seam situation and which seamers want to make the best impression when it matters most in Super Smash finals.
Which sort of feels like it might also be the area of White Ferns cricket, which at the international stage they could probably use the most improvement in. Like they've got batters who can score runs, they've got good spinners. Fielding's normally pretty sharp, normally pretty sharp, but this is a good, solid all-round team who just continually doesn't quite seem to be the sum of their parts. And I would imagine if you could get taking early wickets with the new ball is the obvious way to sort of define that, but it does feel like that's something which could potentially flow on into the international stage in a positive way if you do get one or two of those sort of fringe players really just like making an undeniable case. Although sometimes undeniable cases also just get ignored when it comes to White Fern selection. So maybe not. Who knows?
I don't think what happens in the Super Smash will have any effect on the White Ferns, though, because the players, like the seamers, who the White Ferns are probably going to select, they, like, to me, it's kind of Leah Tahuhu, Jess Kerr, and someone else, maybe Hannah Rowe. They feel like the best seamers for the White Ferns, but I don't necessarily think that they have performed at a high enough level to take the White Ferns. Like, as you said, seam bowling is a bit of a weakness there, but I don't think like any new seamer coming into the White Ferns is going to change much as far as the White Ferns performances go. Like, the White Ferns will win games of cricket based on their spin bowling and their batting.
Is that just strategically, or do you think selection wise it's not going to, like, those players aren't going to be picked, or do you think it's just the players who would step up aren't going to be that far ahead of anyone else to affect things?
Well, I think Molly Penfold explains this, because Molly Penfold's playing for the White Ferns because she does something different. She's got like an athletic prowess that is a point of difference. I don't think she's good enough to consistently play international cricket right now. Like, again, a lot of young White Ferns at the moment, they're not even dominating the Super Smash or HBJ Shield, let alone contributing to the White Ferns in international cricket. But a lot of these seamers, like, they all pretty much do the same thing. They all bowl a similar pace. Some bowl in swing, some bowl out swing. But there's not a whole lot of point of difference. Like, we're just starting to get a few lefties in. We're just starting to get a bit of pace and athleticism into the mix. So I don't think, like, if Rosemary Meir comes into the team, I don't think she makes the White Ferns better necessarily. even Molly Penfold, with her point of difference, she has proven that she does not make the White Ferns better. Say you want to get Sky Bowden, Gabby Sullivan, Emma Black, Marama Downs. I don't think they make the White Ferns better. Like, they need to keep performing in domestic cricket. What I'm saying, I think, is the White Ferns have the seamers to do a job right now. But I don't think there is the seam bowling talent to change the White Ferns' fortunes outside of their current group. Because if Leah Tahuhu's firing on all cylinders, that's a handful in international cricket. And Jess Kerr's skillful. Hannah Rowe's got the outswing and the height package, which is interesting. And you can kind of, if you carry Molly Penfold in the squad, you might have a bit of point of difference in the international arena. But she can get smashed by super smash batters, let alone like what international batters are going to do to it. The strength of the White Ferns is their spin bowling and their batting. The strength of the White Ferns is Amelia Kerr, because she's a spin bowler and she's a really good batter. And I think that is the strength of the White Ferns. That's what makes the White Ferns good. But again, a lack of variety, a lack of pizzazz, a lack of razzle dazzle, and just kind of, everything the Blackcaps generally have. Like the Blackcaps seam bowling depth we always talk about, that is freaky. You got some lefties. Ben Lister, he's a lefty who has a completely different skill package to every other lefty. You got fast bowlers, Ben Sears, Adam Milne, Lockie Ferguson. You got quirky actions from Darfield, Henry Shipley, Zach Folks. You got Willow Rourke, Kyle Jamison, Behemoths, Matt Fisher, Slippery, veterans, Doug Bracewell, Scott Kugelheim, Neil Wagner, Bevan Small. Like, there is Blackcap seam bowling covers all varieties, all types, all skill sets, and there's multiple options in each kind of silo. The White Ferns just don't have that variety in their seam bowling. And that's all right. Like, that will come as women's cricket continues to grow in Aotearoa. And we've seen now there's PJ Watkins as a lefty. Now there's Bree Illing as a lefty. Like, there are players emerging who need to keep doing it in domestic cricket to work their way into the White Ferns. But if I'm trying to win games for the White Ferns right now, you've got the seamers to do a job. But your game winners are Amelia Kerr, Eden Carson, Fran Jonas, and then Lee Kasparek. Your game winners are Amelia Kerr, Susie Bates, Sophie Devine, Maddie Green, and then sprinkling in, Georgia Plimmer, Kate Anderson, and those type of players. What's going to help the White Ferns win right now if Hannah Rowe is a consistent first 11 member, batting 6 or 7 and bowling 10 overs in an ODI, 4 overs in a T20. Like, she's a genuine all-rounder who has the skills to shine in international cricket. And she's batting in that manner. Do you catch my drift here? Am I making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. They're just sort of, there is a ability, but it's not, it's like, on the seam bowling front, but it's not ready to be impactful at international level kind of thing. And so if they are going to win, they need to rely on the other aspects of their game and just have seam bowling that's sort of good enough. And anything above that is a bonus, but hopefully there's nothing below that, the do your job kind of thing, as he's saying. I think that's kind of what you get now, which makes sense. Like, realistically, that's where they're at right now. You try to develop more, but you also development takes time, and you got to let that happen as it happens rather than trying to manufacture it, which perhaps they've been guilty of doing in the past.
Again, yeah, and that's most evident in players like Molly Penfold, who they have tried to fast track because she offers something slightly different. So you can understand.
And the fast tracking doesn't really work.
Yeah, but you can understand the process because she has something that is different and is unique in the seam bowling department in Aotearoa. But international cricket is not a place to, develop a player like that. Again, why aren't so many young players playing for the Blackcaps? Because they're learning their craft in domestic cricket, which is a fantastic farm system for the Blackcaps. And The White Ferns don't do that because they want to rush players into the White Ferns setup, which, as we've seen, given how many games the White Ferns lose and their general demise into a plateau, might not be an ideal plan. However, again, a bit more positive, those spinners are fantastic. And what we've seen from the batters is the best batters for the White Ferns, apart from Divine, who's taken a break, they are the best batters for their teams. They are the leaders for their teams. Amelia, Kerr, Susie Bates, Maddie Green. That is really important. And then you've got Kate Anderson, new White Fern. She's leading Canterbury for runs. Georgia Plimmer, the hot youngster with all the potential. She's playing a lot of key knocks for Wellington alongside Amelia Kerr. So there's a lot of positives with the batting to go with the spin department. Should we finish with a bit of Wellington Phoenix?
Yeah, might as well.
Wellington Phoenix, who have no issues scoring goals. The
men don't.
Just let me set it up, let me set it up. The Costa Barbarossa, another goal for Costa Barbarossa, timely finish. And I also saw a shot from David Ball. Did go past the
score, but it was a shot.
Yeah, it did go past the far post, but he took a shot. They had a good win. I can't remember who was against.
Perth Glory,
but not in Perth, and Ollie Sale was not playing for Perth. So that was a good win for the Wellington Phoenix men. Wellington Phoenix women, they were playing away from home, so we already know what happens there. Probably lost that game. My question, from that loss away from home, and if you can remember back through any other losses away from home, most of their away from home fixtures at this stage, who is the best player in these losses away from home? Who is the best player from the weekend, and has that player also been the best player in other losses away?
Well, first off, 2 goals and an assist for Costa Barbarossa in that Perth Glory game. So he was all over it, which I think takes him up to 8 goals for the season, and I think 4 assists overall as well. So he's actually only one player in the entire A-League who is ahead of him for sort of overall goal contributions, goals plus assists, and that's old mate Fornaroli, who's scoring bundles, and I think he scored 5 in a game earlier on in the season. So that dude's doing that. Costa Barbarossa is the next most prolific attacker in the competition. That's sweet as. The women, it's hard to pinpoint who a best player would be from these away games, because it just feels like everything is only 80% of what they show in the home games. And that's kind of the issue. Like, it's across the board. It's they're 5 games in a row that they've lost now away from home. Technically, the game on the weekend was a home game because the Unite round fell when they were supposed to be playing at home, which is a disaster because it means that they now have 12 games in Australia and only 10 games in New Zealand. Hold on a second. My computer disappeared. There it comes. So, like, that's... I mean, for a team that has such a disparity between home and away, that's not good. But these away games, it's not like they've been dominated in any of them. They've lost by a single goal in all 5 of these away game, in all 5 of this away game losing streak, however that sentence is supposed to end. They're close. Like, there's little things that would improve, but I don't think it's like there's one aspect that's just so much worse when they play away. It's not like, I mean, their goal scoring is a factor, or they've not been scoring as many goals, but they're also not creating as many chances in these away games. And maybe that's not the strikers' fault. This is as much as it is the midfielders aren't progressing as much because the defenders aren't. Like, it just, the kind of thing that's spread out across an overall team performance is leading to fewer goals. They haven't scored in the second half of any of these games. They have scored first in a couple of them and gone on to lose 2-1. There's also been a couple 1-0 defeats. But it feels like their away performance across the board are just 80% of the substance of their home performances. So I don't know how you pick a best player out of that. I think it sort of goes game to game. I thought on the weekend, Rebecca Lake was their best player. But I think in other games, you might have fallen back on I don't know, goalies have been mostly good, apart from a couple of notable mistakes. Brisbane game, obviously Riley Foster, I think it was Brisbane, had a bit of a mare for one of the goals, but then she's also played very well in other ones. And Brianna Edwards has been really good when she's played. I think she's played a home game and an away game, but I can't remember. Like there's bits and pieces. There's Macy Fraser's had some good games and also some quieter ones. I thought Alyssa Wyndham was quite promising in her first start of the season on the weekend, but then I also thought Wynnum and Fraser in the same team is excellent. I love that. I think there's a real good combination to fall back upon. But then when you also have that with Kate Taylor and Annalie Longo as the other midfielders, it's maybe just a little bit too attacking. And Taylor is there as a defensive midfield. The other three are all there to sort of attack. Wynnum playing a bit more as like a little bit further forward than the others, probably really technically in the front line, but it did operate a little bit like a box midfield at times. That maybe the balance isn't there. Like maybe there isn't the one player in the midfield who goes forward and goes back, a la, for example, Chloe Knott and Grace Wisniewski. Neither of them are available at the moment for different reasons. Knott's not with the club anymore, and Wisniewski's out injured. So, like, just have that the box to box type midfielder just to tie things together. I think perhaps is something that's been affected, and that gets into what I think is one of the major issues that they've had, which is just not being able to pick consistent teams. Where the men have 8 players. This is like astonishing to think about. 12 games into a season, both teams have played 12 games. The men have 8 players who have started every one of those 12 games, including 4 guys who have played every single minute this season. That includes Tim Payne, who backed up after an all-whites tour to play 90 minutes in one game famously. He hasn't missed a minute this season. Finn Sermon hasn't missed a minute this season. Scott Wooden hasn't missed a minute this season. Alex Paulson hasn't missed a minute this season. That's 3 of your back 4 and your goalkeeper have been ever present. Like, that kind of stability is fantastic. The Wellington Phoenix Women have 0 players who have started every game this season. They've got a few on 11, and a few of them have started 11, but everyone's like missed something here or there, and they don't necessarily align. And every game, it seems like there's 3 or 4 changes that need to be made for various reasons. And I don't think they've quite got that continuity. But having said that, I mean, last year there were heaps of games, the year before as well, even more so, where like they were competitive sometimes. They were also just not competitive in others. This team has been competitive in every game this season. All of these away defeats we're talking about are single goal defeats. They're not that far away. It's just, yeah, it's got to be a little bit sharper. It's across the board. You just tighten things up just a little bit more, and then some of these 2-1 defeats turn into 1-1 draws or 2-2 draws or even 2-1 victories. You know, they're not far away, and it's big steps up from what they've done in previous seasons. But as much as the consistency has gotten so much better week on week, just some of the sort of some of the big moments are still eluding them, I think, which is the opposite of what you say about the men who have had several games where it felt like they've been dominated against, and yet have still got something out of those games where they're just a little bit able to score that one big chance or to defend their goal for longer periods and turn that into victories, holding on late on, and strong, picking up in the second half rather than fading off in the second half, as the women seem to have been doing in a few of these games, which I think is also fitness related, which I think is also depth related, which when you have injuries in your squad, I think those things are all connected as to why their second halves haven't been as good. But I mean, you can see what it's supposed to look like with the men's team at the moment, who is doing a lot of these things very well and have been able to get consistent results away from home. It's just, it's just tightening up a couple of nuts and bolts, and that and those performances will fix things in a hurry. But you just got to do it. You got to figure it out first.
I'm doing a bit of footballing mathematics, and also a couple of highlights I saw. Wellington Phoenix are first in the A-League, so they're the best team in the A-League, right? Like, can we say that?
They're top of the table, Yeah. Standings don't lie.
Well, sometimes they do.
Sometimes they do, but in this case, they're at least first equal. I think they're tied on points with Melbourne Victory still, but have more wins, but less goal difference. Tiebreaker is wins at the moment. Whatever. They're at the very least one of the two best teams.
We're from Aotearoa, so let's say they're the best team in the A-League.
Yeah.
Wellington Phoenix are the best team in the A-League, and they have a dude in the center of their midfield called Alex Rufer. Is Alex Rufer one of the best players in the A-League?
In his role, perhaps. He's having his best season. That's beyond doubt at this point. Like, once you get 3 months in, I don't think you can argue that. But yeah, I mean, he's still like a limited midfielder in some aspects, but he's just a great example of someone who knows his strengths and does those things, those specific things extremely well in a way that complements the players around him and doesn't detract in any way. He makes guys around him better by just doing what he does very well. So I think within his specific role, yeah, I'd say he's one of the best players around the A-League.
What are his limitations?
Well, I don't think he's necessarily a guy. He scored. This is bad timing because he scored a bit of a banger of a goal on the weekends. Like piled one into the bottom corner. That's only his third goal of his A-League career. One was a penalty, and the other one was.
Well, so you're saying a limitation for a centre midfielder is he doesn't score enough goals.
Yeah, well, I think you need some goals from midfield. But that's also what I'm saying is that's not his role. So he has limitations, but the limitations don't apply necessarily to what he's asked to do. And he does have a little bit of creative passing. Like, it's not necessarily dude who beats a defender and well, he's not playing those like kind of sliding low passes in behind for someone to run onto, but his angled chips over the top are really good. And that's something that they've lent on a bit more this season than before. That stuff is awesome. Like, he's hitting Costa Barbarouses, making smart runs, chipping over the top on the angle. That stuff's beautiful. Because other than that, he's like, it's a functional kind of role. Let's get the ball, keep it moving, turn out of pressure, just be a cog in the machine. But that's what he's asked to do, and that's what he does very well.
Yeah, I think he's one of the best players in the A-League. Like, every time the ball's around you, you suck it up, you hoover it up, you vacuum it up, little spin, little bit of a body shimmy to throw off the defender, and then every pass is on the money. Like, I don't know if you've got like passing accuracy stats.
Can you look it up?
Can we just do a mini deep dive to finish the podcast here on Alex Rufer? Because every pass I see him throw is glorious. If it's a long ball to the other side of the field, and that is a skill set. Can you find the space? Can you see the space? Can you sense the space and then execute the pass to get the ball to the space? But before all of that, he either wins the ball through defense or he receives the ball under pressure, gets out of that pressure, and makes the pass. To me, in my highly uneducated A-League opinion, there's not many other players who are playing as classy as Alex Rufer in the midfield. And he's doing it for the best team in the A-League. So I think that reflects pretty positively on Alex Rufer as a footballer, as well as him in his role.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can find. He's completing 45 accurate passes per 90 minutes at a success rate of 84.9. So, like, not as good as like Sermon and Wooden are both over 90s and are making more passes, but obviously that's centre back passes. Those are passing to each other into their fullbacks sideways, and hit a lot of those would be to Rufer as well, who then spins out of pressure, advances it forward. Like, those are different scenarios, and I think that's pretty good for a dude in his position. Yeah, like he has a role and he does that role extremely well. I do like when I say he has limitations, I think those limitations would be more exposed on other teams and have been in previous Phoenix teams. And this Phoenix team, they're not at all. Like, the coach has put him in a specific spot with specific instructions that bring out the best of Alex Rufer, and he has responded by taking what we thought was the best of Alex Rufer and raising the bar even further, which is the same thing you can say about Costa Barbarouses. Like, he's also a player who has his limitations. Everyone in the A-League has limitations, right? Like, if you don't, you're not playing in the A-League. you're playing Premier League or something. Costa Barbarouses is a dude who looked on struggle street last season, and then this year he's playing again one of his best ever seasons as well. He's fantastic, and it just looks like everything flows with him. It looks like everything's happened naturally, and it just fits. Like the jigsaw puzzle, just the pieces are all in the right spot. That's also massive credit to Chiefy and how he's reorganized his team, because those are not new signings. Those are guys who have been in this team before, and he's sort of adjusted what's expected of them to get the best out of them. Like, it's fantastic from those players and how they've performed first and foremost, but it's also fantastic from a coach to put them in that position and to get that response out of them.
Yeah, I'm not saying Alex Rufer is one of the best footballers in the world.
No,
but I think he is definitely one of the best players in the A-League. And yeah, I understand everything he's saying about the role, but he's also a centre midfielder. So everything he's good at and everything he does well is centre midfielder stuff. Like, his role is a centre midfielder, and obviously there's intricacies in the different roles of a midfield, but if I'm picking a centre midfielder, I want him. Now, do I want him over a Marko Stamenic? Maybe not. But again, as I said earlier about the Blackcaps team, like, now there's a couple of those lads for the All Whites, which I think is pretty cool, and that is the end of our cool podcast. Certainly not cool conditions. It's blimmin' hot, but we're out here. We're doing our best. That is the Niche Cast. We will record our subscriber podcast tomorrow, full of Blackcaps T20 versus Pakistan discussion and a roundup of the Flying Kiwis. Got so many Flying Kiwis, we can't fit them into this jam-packed podcast, so we'll dive deeper into that tomorrow for the subscriber podcast. Big up yourself. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Church.